I had a few time the last hour, and I like to do a very little presentation. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes. So once upon a time, a farmer had some time and was sitting in a tractor wheel. I get a photo out of things and set up a GitHub repo. Oh. So I looked into GitHub and did see it was on 23rd of June 2016. And you did the post in the Combine forum. And all of that was starting here in October 14, 2016. And I think at the beginning only 4 or 5 people were talking. I think Dorian was one of the first. So I did make this picture out of one of the first versions I did see. And yes, I registered sometimes later, and I make this here at the point in the SampleCon. This was the first time I did try to use AgOpenGPS here in Europe, and it did not work because of the difference between comma and the SampleCon. So nobody did use it before here in Europe. Yes, that's a picture of May and February 2019. And I think there are many people new here, and I see we got a lot of posts in the Combine forum. There are 479 tweets regarding to AgOpenGPS. And if you look here, there are 2,000 posts with 390,000 K views, and here also the AgOpenGPS tweet with 4,000 posts, and I think Brian did read everyone. Yes, we have also the AgOpen discourse group, so main of the discussion is going there. And we also have some Telegram groups. There is the German group, the Switzer group, the English group, French, and so on and so on. And I think the German group is one of the biggest. So, hallo alle in Deutschland. Yes. So that was only a small thing I wanted to show to some users. So we are working on this for some years. Brian has made very good job, and I'd like to say thank you for the work and for all the doings. And over these long times, I think there are a lot of problems, and so I think I give over to Richard in a short time, and then to Brian.
Andreas, I think we had Richard is working on a little bit of the YouTube stream problem. The
Okay.
last couple minutes, I don't think anybody heard you on the YouTube stream, and the screen went black for a little bit. So we might have to backtrack a bit, but I think Richard will come on momentarily.
Oh no.
The YouTube is working now, and I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Let me see where I left this stupid stuff almost. Sorry, I was trying to get a little bit more okay now. Well, hopefully we try to have Daniel here, because he Daniel wrote a lot of major codes again in AgOpenGPS to speed up the whole process. Especially multi-threading is one of its big things that will help to speed up the program. It's not visible in the interface as most of our people are seeing, but definitely in the code there's a lot changed. compare it with something like that you can do multiple tasks together now. So the complete interface is running in a thread, but all the path calculations are running in another thread. So it can work together now, and you don't have to wait before the path planning is done to finish up the GUI. And that is a major step forward to if you look in that way. All the things you've done, I just installed his version. He sent me about 5 minutes ago. So it's maybe best if we can go to in another thread, so it can work together now. We can go back to Brian first, and then hopefully I have something to show in this new version. If that's possible.
Bunch of technical guys with troubles, computer troubles. That's pretty funny.
Cool, isn't it?
But just before the meeting started, my main desktop computer had 2 big monitors on it, and I thought, well, I better restart before the meeting. And it wouldn't boot. It just sat there and went round and round and round and just waiting. So it doesn't matter who you are, as computer troubles all the time. Can you hear me, Andreas? Yeah. Okay, good. Just double check. I want to speak for an hour. The first thing is the community. Thank you to the community. AgOpenGPS would never have gotten to where it is without a help from so many people contributing code, contributing ideas, testing, finding problems, go back, fix those problems, make a few more new ones, and just keep going in circles. But every one of those circles, AgOpenGPS has gotten better. And without the community and without everyone working together, there's no way that a single person could have done all of that work. So thank you for all of that. I think together we've created an amazing program. And Andreas showed some of the original pictures, and I recall how simple it was. It was actually, AgOpenGPS is one of my first WinForms applications. I'd never used C# before and had to learn C#. So during the whole time of building AgOpenGPS, I've continued to learn programming, continued to learn C# and Windows Forms, like the GUI that it uses, and all of its limitations. So, up until this last version, especially with Daniel has a really good background in C# programming, and he's got a lot of tricks, and I've learned a lot of tricks, and we've learned tricks from each other on how to do things more efficiently. And we've had many discussions on, okay, well, how can we simplify the program? And we keep coming back to the same conclusion that AgOpenGPS isn't a simple program at all. It's a program where every little part seems to rely on another part, and the whole program is running at the same time. Think about your spray controller on your sprayer. You have a pump, you have a flow control, you have the booms, you have the nozzles. If one little thing is missing, the entire loop shuts down. If your flow meter isn't working, well, then you don't have flow control, and then you don't have flow. And AgOpenGPS is a lot like that. It's not like a word processing program where you're just doing one thing. You're typing, or you're saving a document, or highlighting text. With AgOpenGPS, you have inputs and outputs, and reading information from GPS and reading information from modules, sending it out to modules, reading sensors, calculating lines ahead, and saving, and running the GUI, and you're clicking buttons, and the whole the OpenGL needs to update the screen as well. So you have all of these processes, and they all seem to want everyone's information in the entire program. And I think that in order for Windows, and like generally C#, everyone says it's slow. So one of the ways to get around the slowness of C# is to do some bad programming where we use public variables, and any class or anything that needs information can just access it. It's more prone to to error, but if you do it well and you keep lots of different chunks of data in different classes and are careful, then it works quite well. So the process or the way AgOpenGPS is written isn't the limitation. It's just our knowledge of mathematics and the GUI. I find the GUI by far the most difficult aspect of AgOpenGPS, because I'm not an artist. I know there are lots of very artistic people in the community, and with this new version, once we get the layout figured out, then we'll be calling on you guys to make the pictures, because I suck at colors. I can make it black and gray, but beyond that, I'm not that good at picking colors. So that's kind of where we're at. Daniel's working on some of the algorithms to make, boundary contours and, more of that sort of thing. And I'm working on figuring out more of the background of the GUI for settings and being able to make it a lot more user friendly. And I hope I can share my screen, kind of what we've been working on lately, but I'll give it back to you, Andreas. And that was just a bit of an opening on kind of where we are and a bit of where we are, but mostly where we came from. And again, the special thank you to all of you. So Andreas. Hello, Andreas.
Yes, sorry, I had an audio problem. What did you say?
If you want to introduce Richard and Daniel and.
Okay, yes. So we have here a small team with 4 members. That's Mr. Richard. Say hello. Hey.
Hi guys and girls.
I guess he's doing much of this, yes, complicated audio and video things, and we talk a lot. And we always also Matthias Hammer here in our group. He's not here today. He's the master of section control and other things. And Wilbert, hello.
Hello.
He is, I think, a lot of work at the moment outside, and he did set up the last time most of the video meetings, and he does a lot of stuff to bring us together. So I'd like to say thank you. And I'd like also say thank you to Daniel, also called Quetty here in the forum. He's joined us and he is helping Brian to improve the code and to work on AgOpen version 5. So I hope I didn't forget anybody. Yes. So I
don't think so.
Yes. Yes, there are a lot of users from the forum and also from the Terea Telegram groups to give us inputs, and yes, we like to bring our information together. And so today we thought we make a meeting and you show you what we are doing, and I hope Brian can show something about the new version, and maybe you have questions to Brian and other one, so we can talk together. Thank you.
I'm not so sure about showing, because it's kind of funny, because from the outside, the new version 5 looks just like the old version. The big changes are all in behind. There's a couple questions. Charles talking about the software design to me seems like it could be suited to a message bus architecture. Is this being used for the great V5 rewrite? No, actually it's not. It's just a lot smarter code, a lot more efficient code. And Richard had talked about tasks. And I mean, you think about it, when you load a field, it has to go get all this, read in all the section data, read in all the boundaries and the headlands and all that sort of stuff. Well, I mean, like in my computer, there's 8 processors. So, and then the entire GUI runs on CPU 0, along with the video card. So there's 7 other processors that can be doing stuff. So it's called it's called await task. And what that does is it says, I got this task of loading boundaries. I'm gonna go send that off to the task manager that creates multiple threads and then starts loading it. Or if you're moving and you're driving across the field and you want to create a new line, rather than taking time away from the GUI and everything else, send that to another thread, create a new reference line in the background, and then when that's done, just come back and now just deliver the new AB line back. So all that sort of thing is much, much faster. And that's where the big difference is. Should I share my screen? Yeah. Okay, how do I do this? Share screen. That was desktop, wasn't it? Screen 1, share.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we see Visual Studio.
Visual Studio. Where do I even begin? Well, let's start with something fun. I hope this runs. We're both in the middle of really dramatic changes in the program. So, I mean, we're working together, but we're working separately. And we have different, this is Drive. I mean, this is the simplified version of AgOpenGPS. You can see that it doesn't line up the buttons, but the whole concept was to make it simpler. Now, I remember down here, we had all these menus and that sort of thing. I mean, the concepts are where we can just come up with a single setting screen. Here we have on the home, we can put any information that we want. Again, I just started this 2 days ago, so it's all really, really rough. But suppose we go into tools. Now this menu pops down and you can, this menu can be as long as you want. Here you have the data sources. There you have tools, and there you have the vehicle. If you want to load and save a vehicle or save as, you can do all that here. Same with the tools. Right away, you can save a tool, load a tool, tells you what tool you're using. Up here can be, in the main part of it, it can tell you exactly, what the tool is, rather than going to 15 different places to try to find, to do your settings. Just do it all in one place. And then the way the menuing works is really, really slick, because even if you have a small display, the menuing can scroll. Now, I don't know if we can do that here. It's not long enough, but you can have many, many items and then it can just scroll. But again, the beauty is, so you just do your configuration, and even changing that, like here, there's no more, accept button. Like if you want tow between tank, there it is. You want, rigid behind, there it is. And same with sections. I went with a black theme. I don't know why I did, but everything's black, modern theme. There's no limit on sections, so you can put in, whoops. Suppose you wanted to make a sprayer with 35 sections. Well, there you go. And then you can set each one of these individual sections to be any size you want. So it's 12.41 meters. So those are some of the advances. I mean, it's still going to have sections. It's still going to have, all the same basic stuff, but it'll just hopefully be a whole lot smoother and a lot easier to use. Switches. Whoops, see, look at that, got an error. default section width is something's too big, something's too small. So I just start this again. I hope that makes sense. That, and I'll run Daniel's here right away too. You know, and same with, hopefully I can load a field. No, I can't even load a field. Oh, there we go. You'll notice that there's no AB button, there's no curve button, there's none of that stuff. You know, it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want a quick AB? Well, that doesn't work because it doesn't make the AB lines. This is a bad version. What I should do is use the demo version. But maybe I'll still do that. Sorry for this. Make sure to turn the right one off. So you can see it's rough. There's some big changes. Bear with me for 1 sec. I did take some screenshots. Everything's slower over Zoom. I don't know if you noticed this one. There's this. It's called boundary overlap. And one of the things that used to just drive me crazy with the air seeder was you'd make the boundary, and as soon as you would make the boundary, and the outside of the air seeder was 1 millimeter over the boundary, it would turn the sections off. So that boundary, it allows you to set a percentage. You can still set it to 0, but if you set it for, like this is, set it for 50%, then half of the section can be outside of the boundary before it actually turns off. You can set it to 100% so that the entire section is outside the boundary before it turns off, or if you set it to 0, it's just like it always was. So it's little things like that. The other concept is, where is it? You notice that this is shaded, it's blend shaded, and then this is the inner boundary, and this area is shaded brown. Now, previously, we used to just paint the sections. Where's that picture? This green and brown and green is the back buffer. Now, what the back buffer does is it's the area just above the sections. And what it does is it takes a little picture every 1/10 of a second. It takes a little picture of what's ahead of the sections. So you can imagine that these 3 sections now are sitting, hopefully you can see my mouse, are sitting right there. And what it does, this dark green is outside the boundary. This browny greeny area is inside the boundary. This really, really green area is where the sections have done. So what you have to do is when you take a picture of what's in the buffer, now the individual pixels, all you do is you find the color. Is the color a dark green? That means we're outside. Is the color a light green? Then that means it's a section. Is it this kind of halfway in between green? Well, then we know that that's a working area. So then we can take and chop up all these areas into boundaries, headland, section control, and outside the field. So what Daniel started doing is what's called triangulation. Where is it? What it does is it turns the area, and using the boundary points, it uses those and it creates triangles, and it creates a full mapped surface, even though you haven't done anything. And so that gets away from, you can imagine that as you're driving along, if you want to figure out if you're inside or outside the boundary, well, you have to use all of the points around the entire boundary to see if you're inside or outside. So between that and figuring out if you're inside a headland or you're inside an inside boundary or outside an outside boundary and all those, every time, 10 times a second, you have to go through every point and figure out, are you inside or outside of the boundary? Now, all we do is we look at the color just ahead of the section. And based on your look ahead, that's how far we look ahead into the future. and look for those colors. So that has created a huge speed increase just on something like that alone. We could always use the buffer for sections, but now we can use that same buffer and just look at the different colors and what they mean and try to decipher what's coming up. Where are we? Where are we in the field? That's the biggest part of AgOpenGPS, is where are we in the field and what's ahead of us? Do we turn sections off? Do we turn sections off because it's a boundary? Do we turn sections off because it's a headland? Do we lift? That sort of thing. And once you know all those colors, then it's easy. But I hope some of that makes sense. Not sure all what I should go through.
So maybe you can show some of the concepts of AgAO.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And see, we could have that settings screen come up here now, and you could do your settings on that first run rather than having to go into AgOpenGPS, and that way it starts up basically working. You'll notice that there is no longer any input-output in AgOpenGPS, and that goes through all the loopback. I don't know if anyone understands what a loopback is. Think about a network card that's built into Windows, or into every computer. There's a single network that becomes its own LAN, and its address is 127.0.0.0 all the way up to 127.255.255. There's a chunk of 127 that's dedicated for a network inside of the computer. And really, you can only use like one IP address, but you can use lots of different ports. So yes, I have very secure computers. Hopefully it runs. There we go. So AgIO has is the communications program. So I can exit drive, and AgIO keeps going. So if I have all my serial lines, and like right now I have an IMU connected. Here it tells me that it's COM3. And it's connected, and it's putting out 100 bytes per second of data. So what AgIO does is you can have all your different modules, and you can connect any module. It's not an auto steer module. It's not a, so if you want to create your own module, it's just a communication system. And it's just like plugging in USB. The computer doesn't really care what you're plugging in, only the software plugs in and where you plug it. So as you connect the different modules, then you just connect them, and it's not, auto steer dependent, that sort of thing. Same with GPS. We hope to have run 2 GPSs for implement steer, so that's looking for that in the future. There's NTRIP. Yes, I know. There's the old NTRIP in there too. Because again, this is all just about communications. And you can load and save and set your UDP. If you want to use UDP, turn UDP on. And now it all communicates via UDP. So if something goes wrong with AgOpenGPS, or in this case, it's called Drive, you can run them independently. So your communication stuff is all part of this. So even before you run AgOpenGPS or Drive, you can set up all your communication. And here it tells you what your CPU use is. Bring up Device Manager. Just all the little things that you used to do. You'd have to go find this in Windows. It's Start M, but it's all there and nice and handy. So that's been the focus of our work over the last little while. is making some of these things a lot simpler to use and a lot more flexible. The other thing is that now, since all the data and the information and the PGN is just a communication string of data between the outside world and AgOpenGPS or Drive. And once it's in the loopbat network, you can create another application like AgIO that listens to those PGNs, and then you can make a spray controller, or you can make, kind of anything you want that listens to the data and the information and the key pushes and the section control and everything coming from AgOpenGPS. You don't have to get into AgOpenGPS. You can just write one of these little secondary applications. So is there anything else we should talk about, Andreas or Richard? Richard?
Well, sorry, I have to find the unmute button because of a lot of programming is running to keep it all running. I got some pictures sent from Daniel this afternoon. I can't. I try to use his latest version. Maybe you can show something a little bit more, but my computer says no, so I can't make any boundary lines or AB lines to show what happens. So instead of that, I can share the screen. Oh, I can share my screen. Cool.
I can, okay. I was thinking I could just start it quick and go through the major part of it, since I have my screen shared right now.
Yeah, fine.
Brian, you need to allow Richard to share the screen later.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing as soon as this is done.
And maybe answer some questions?
Yes. Oh yeah, okay. See, it's nothing but bugs. It doesn't work worth a shoot. So this is the new version, which looks like the old version, but so much work has happened in the background, and that's where the work has happened. So, are you able to get yours working, Richard?
No, I need to. I can show some pictures from my system, but one thing to show about that task manager, it's running in the background of AgIO. You see now you have different timings in the bottom above article fix, and there you can see most of it runs at 0 or 1 millisecond to make a full frame count and that's for the path calculation only. So now it will definitely help a lot to get all the path planning and everything that is very necessary to get a good auto steer. It will definitely help to make it all faster. One of the major issues, major improvements, sorry. Yeah, I tried this, but it doesn't work for me.
Oh, it doesn't work in the new version.
Nope, not yet.
Bugs all around. It does work really well. The other thing is being able to use shape files. You can import boundaries from shape files. And Daniel has set up so that you can load all of your sections, and as you drive along, if you drive into a new field inside a new boundary, it'll load that particular field. And what else? Yeah, you downloaded a map. A shapefile had 13,000 different little city blocks so you could have up to 13,000 field, and it still runs at just a few milliseconds. So that part's pretty slick. I'm hoping to add some of that, or I showed you that settings menuing on this side too. There's too many buttons. It just drives me crazy. You want access to everything, but you don't want to see anything. So that's a bit of a graphics design nightmare. So I should try answering some. I'll just stop sharing now. I think you guys get the idea where we're at. It's most of it is in this. Now the other thing, I don't know if you recall me mentioning UTM. We've stopped using UTM, and now we use it's called local plane geometry, where you take, based on where you are latitude, you have so many meters per degree. And the computation is much, much, much faster. I found it, I made a field that was 3 kilometers by 3 kilometers driving with the tractor. And I think I was out 15 centimeters, but who knows which one was right and which one was wrong. So it's perfectly accurate. There is no convergence angle conversion anymore, because you are lining up right on a longitudinal line. And it works really well, but all you have to do is just, like here is degrees per latitude, is this factor is how many meters there are per degree. And instead of huge amount of computations to do the UTM stuff. And it makes the program much simpler. Again, that's the focus, and that's, I know the program is complicated, but as Daniel says, is if you step through it, it makes sense. It's overwhelming to look at first, but simplification is, and speeding up is what really has been the work. So I'll stop sharing. If you want to use it now, Richard.
You have to first say that I can. It's a disabled, and you're the host.
I stopped sharing.
I know, but you're the host, and sharing is disabled.
Oh, Andreas is the host.
Not anymore. He created you the host.
How did I do that?
You go to screen sharing, this more, and you can allow other users to share the screen.
Do I do that on
screen sharing? There's a more button.
Okay, multiple participants?
Yes.
Now can you?
Yes, I can now.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Let me see where I had this. Can you see this, everyone?
Yes.
This is one of the features, what is called headlands. And if we had a field like this before, you can see the left, the new version, right, the old version. Now all the corners are exactly as they are in the boundary line. In the old version, you can see that it collapses in all the corners, and that's because all the triangles are created now. So you can calculate from the corner where the headland line should be. One of the major improvements. Other thing like this, all the corners are now rounded off, so you can, if you can even create an AB curve line from the boundary line, like it's look like a boundary contour, but then it will be a full loop AB curve line, and you can drive through the corner like this. Other thing, and I think this is one of the improvements Martin Andrew already showed us maybe a year ago. His son created something that U-turn will follow the U-turn line, so you can skip and it will follow exactly as it should. And then also a nice feature, tram lines are now 2 passes, like 2 tracks, and you can set the distance between them independently. You can set the width of it, and the section will also turn off if you want. So if you are having an air seeder with some tram line valves in it, it will automatically shut down those valves if you're driving over a tram line with those sections. So also a pretty nice one. Yeah, you can see it also over here. It's pretty cool. That were the images Daniel sent me. It's time for some questions to answer, I think. Maybe Wilbert, you.
There's a whole pile of questions that have come through in the chat there. Try to weed through them. I don't know where we want to start. I guess the very first one, maybe you want to start at the beginning, was from Leopold Huber. And he's asking, will it be possible in the next version of AgOpen to set the front and rear mower in device settings? Might be one to start.
Yeah, you can have multiple tools, and you can have offset on those tools.
I can show that. I can show that. That is something that is possible to show.
The hard part with that one is the GUI. Is how do you
like
you
this?
got multiple sections, multiple tools.
There you have a front and back, completely independent from each other. But there's no GUI, so I can show you how to set it up. It needs to be written first.
But yeah, the GUI is the hard part.
Yep, as always.
As always.
So that's a nice, easy question, I guess. In a sense, easy. The next one, I guess we'll go. I think you answered Charles Quick's question about the message bus architecture. So, quick question from Jeff Reiterhoven. He says, "Why did you go for C#?"
Speed of development. You can create something in 3 days versus 3 months with C++. It's an easy language. Every question you can ever ask is answered on the internet already. And there's a ton of resources. There's a ton of YouTube videos. It's kind of a universal language, and it's so popular. And so why not pick something easy for a change?
Keep it simple, stupid, right? So the next one was from Math51. He says, could you tell us more about the experiments currently being done by the BiNav TNSS receiver? I don't know, speak by Brian on French Telegram. So maybe you were on that Telegram group. Anyway, what expected versus current IMU setup and the current dual antenna setup?
Andreas?
Yes, I did get some of these BiNav receivers. You see the receiver is only a small board, and they have a dual antenna, so they have two antenna connectors. And I did started to making a box to put it into it. So it's a very nice receiver. It has Ethernet, so it works over TCP and UDP, and it has two RS-232 ports, and you can output different messages on each port, and two antenna connectors. I will go out tomorrow or starting the next week and to make some final tests with that receiver. And the last test I did have a small filter, so I will try to run it without a filter for ROR. Heading is working very good, and I think it would be a very good option to have dual antenna. You have no IMU and no ROR sensor, and yes, it's very easy to set up, and I think the price is also very interesting. It's about 500 euros or dollars, and there are only very few changes, so it's just one NMA sentence to add. So it's only 10 lines of code in the NMA parser.
This is great info. I'm learning just as much because I'm very far out of the loop, but I'll keep going down the question line. The next one was from Alex, and he says, is it going to be new boundaries versus slash sections in version data again in version v5? I think you kind of answered that one already, but maybe you want to expand on that.
I'm not sure what else to say. I think what he means to say is that from 3 to 4, we once had the thing that we also had it in the first start screen, that sections.txt will be deleted. And I think is that what he's meaning, that if it will go again, if we go to version 5.
Yeah, it'll all be different. Yeah.
Is it backwards compatible to load a field in?
I don't know yet. It seems to work, but I don't know. Maybe.
That's a good question. Good answer.
I mean, we can always make a converter, right?
Yeah,
Like if we can't,
that will be a
I
good
don't think
solution.
we're too limited on the existing one. I mean, all the machine, the tool stuff. Oh, that's the other thing is saving all the tools, the vehicles, the settings, and everything. It's all saved in XML now, directly from Windows. So all that's going to be completely different. Saving classes and settings, and just, you know, to be able to save 150 sections, well, you just can't write that out in a text file, any sort of format. So you need a self-expanding, you know, format like XML, and that works really well. You just spit it out and read it back in again, and so that works super well. So definitely not the machine, the tool, all of that setting stuff, but boundaries, and, you know, I think as long as you have the boundary, do you really need all your old section data? So I think if we can keep the boundary consistent and the headland consistent, then I think that goes a long way to being compatible. Hope that helps.
I think you answered the next two questions, so I think we're reading the same page now. So Sebastian asked, the vehicles dependent on ISO XML. So you kind of talked through that. They're saved as XML now. Charles Quick asks, I think we talked about CPU usage also. So we kind of got over that one also. Boundary overlap's a good idea. Oh, here we go. Is AgIO mainly banked to use with serial ports? I would imagine, is AgIO mainly used for serial ports? Maybe,
Everything.
Joaquin, you want to ask that? It's just typing in here. Okay. Says think. Does that make any sense, Brian? More clarification on that one.
Is that right at the bottom now? I think what he's asking is AgIO only do serial port, but it does UDP, serial port, everything. And in the old AgOpenGPS, kind of if it went in serial, it would have to go out serial. But now, even if you take an IMU in on serial, it's available on UDP as well. Like kind of everything is everywhere. The AgIO is kind of a translator, and it just brings everything in and then just spits it out, you know, via loopback to anything on the machine, or anything on the machine via loopback back to AgIO, and then out as UDP LAN or serial.
Okay, looks like we're racing through these questions.
But just one more word on that. The downside of that is now every module will receive every piece of information. So you need, like for the Arduino, you need an efficient parsing scheme to be able to reject the things that you don't want and just ignore the things that you don't want. So whereas before, when you connected a steer module, only steer module information went to the steer module. Relay module or machine module information only went there. But now everything goes everywhere, because if you want to attach relays to your steer module, then you want the steer module data. I don't know if you remember the little checkbox in version 4 that said, do you want to send relay data to the auto steer? Well, now it just goes there. And same with unplugging the USB. If I disconnect the IMU, AgOpenGPS just turns off the roll thingy and the roll, and ignores roll. You plug it back in and it uses roll. The best setting is the one you don't have to set. If that makes sense. And it does it automatically. So I hope that answers it.
I have a question. I think it's also good to know for some people who would like to help in coding. So where can we find the new version of Daniel, or is this some documentation of the work now is going on?
Well, as you can see, both Drive and and AgOpenGPS are very rough. There's almost, they don't even run, only little parts, and we know exactly what not to run. You're just gonna have to give us a little time to get our poop in a group, because it's so buggy, especially trying to you can't make a GUI until you have all the base code in place. Like, you can't make changes on settings if you don't have the settings, and you can't make the settings until you know how the core program works. And we know once the core program is done, then we can get into it totally, like GUIs, GUI ideas and graphics. That stuff is awesome. But in terms of project management, does anybody want the job?
Together, not all together.
Please.
So I think we can delete some branches on GitHub. The old one they are not used. So you're looking in the code they need where we are and where we are not. So better there is nothing instead of we have 5 versions who are not working.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless.
Maybe something to show about, I don't know if it's already showable, about that new pivot stuff. Pivot steering.
Oh, well, I made that video. I don't know if anyone saw the video on the pivot steering. See, for me, that's what I really enjoy doing is coming up with the new concepts, like just totally thinking outside the box and steering from the back of the tractor instead of the front of the tractor. What's best way to show that? Or we just...
Darren's question there, he says, has Brian or anyone had any time yet to test Brian's new guidance code in the real world with regard to the new method of keeping the pivot point online? So the answer is no.
No, it's on one computer. And the hard disk crashed and I lost it all. I'm kidding. The internet would have to crash. No, I took it out for a drive here just before it got really cold and snowy, and holy shit, it was nice. Driving on sides of ditches in 30 or 40 centimeters of snow, and just adding 12, 13 degrees to the steering angle to keep it on the side of the ditch. But man, it just hung in there. I'm really excited about that new system. And even with curve, if the curve is like this, well, then it's really hard. I recommend everyone watch that video on the latest one on steering, on auto steer, because it's very, very different on how it works. And just in a nutshell, you have your AB line, and then or a curve, and you have your point on the curve. And what we were doing is trying to make the steer axle sit on that curve. And then, as you go around the corner, well, then the back end, it tracks. It's not on the back anymore. And the big aha moment was, instead of sitting on the curve, based on the curvature of the line, move the point over. So then all of the algorithm that makes the front end sit on the curve, it's still valid, except it doesn't give a hoot where the line is. All it cares about is, where do I drive to? And then if you drive to where that point is, the back of the tractor is sitting on the line. And that's the concept. And it was so simple, but it's a huge leap forward, because now you can take that point and, if the back end is drifting and it's just not getting there, you can measure the pivot distance in the back. Well, you just move the point over a bit. It's nothing complicated. Now it just steers to that point. Well, it pulls the back end up, even though the tractor's on an angle. So I say, if it works in the snow, it'll work in the field. And super smooth, like ridiculously smooth. The wheel just... So pretty encouraging. I'm sure the next time I go, it'll be a disaster. But it just seems to be that way.
I think it's a major step forward for, especially for hilt fields and AB curves to follow the line better. It will definitely be a good solution to solve those problems. CMPS, do we need to talk about that?
I've used it many hours. It works flawless, literally flawless.
The idea of the CMPS is ultimate, of course, that it has to be a module on its own and to have AgOpenGPS to work proper.
Well, we discussed this in the last meeting. It should be able to work anywhere. If we're sending out if you're attaching it to the steer board, then your steer software should be able to send out an IMU PGN. What we have is an IMU PGN that sends out heading and roll. So that's the only criteria. If you want to make your own little IMU, plug it into a serial, like the little demo I did where I just plugged it in, then that works if you want a UDP. But all the thing has to do is send out a PGN with heading and roll. And we just have the specification for heading and roll. We have a spreadsheet with all the PGNs on it. And I'll post that in, what's it called? Telegram. And so the concept is it's not hardware dependent, but your hardware just needs to spit out the right software or the right sentence. And so that sentence can come from anywhere. It can come from UDP, it can come from serial, it can come from its own module, it can come from the steer board, it can come from, a machine board, just as long as remember, every PGN is everywhere. So if you throw out a PGN, that PGN goes everywhere. Simple.
And I think we can also see if we are going backwards with the CMPS better. So because the CMPS also pointing to the northing, so you have the difference between the data from the CMPS 14 and the heading from the GPS, for example.
Yeah, it works pretty good. Well, even the old piece of crap BNO, you guys know I just love that 055 to death. But all you're doing when you're backing up is comparing the heading that you were in, and the GPS heading and the IMU heading. And if they flip more than 130 degrees, that means you're backing up. What the BNO 055 like to do is just have a stroke and then just do it automatically. So, but the CMPS, I don't know, Andreas, if you plug it in and it just starts up some random position. It doesn't start pointing north. At least I haven't found it to. And what I don't know is if you leave it long enough, does it point north? But if you don't move it, then the heading never changes and it's never right. So you can't rely on it as a north pointing device, as far as in all my testing anyway.
Yes, I think you need also to add some magnetic decoration. So it's not showing to the GPS node, and then it's showing to the magnetic node. And,
I mean, all we're using it for is to smooth out the heading. As you got to fix here, fix here, fix here, fix here, and then your heading is doing this, and just take that IMU. Doesn't matter what it is, but just filtering those points out to be smoother. So, and I think because it is stable, we can really, really rely on maybe 90 or 95% of the IMU reading. Like take a really, really high reading because it is quite stable. And roll is good. I think roll is tricky because I think different GPS units filter the roll or a quick change. Like the Outback I was using, I mean, you do one of these and the IMU picks it up perfectly, except the GPS position doesn't do this. So then now the IMU adds a bump this way. So even though you have gone through a bump and the GPS corrected it, now the IMU corrects it this way. So I did add a roll filter, so you can set it everywhere from 0 to like just barely moving, so it'll smooth out those bumps. And I found with my GPS unit, as you play with it, if I set my filtering to like 50%, then it eliminates some of that wiggle back and forth. I mean, the worst thing you could do is go over rough land and make make the position worse than without an IMU. Because that's exactly what happens is if the IMU isn't following the GPS, you go this way, and then when you come back, the IMU says, no, you got to go this way. So now you're going like this with the GPS instead of just this. And that's why on rough land with the MMA, it would just amplify that position. So that was no good. But with the CMPS, there's some hope. The best is the dual antenna.
Okay. So the ROR filter is now in AgOpenGPS.
It's in AgOpenGPS, but it's just a smoothing filter. It's very, very simple.
Okay, so if you can also use it with our antenna system to smooth it a little bit.
Yeah, but you don't use roll in the AgOpenGPS if you have a dual. Oh, I guess you have like with AVR.
Yes,
there's so many combinations. That's always a challenge. Is how do you write the software to take so many different configurations? It's hard. Like Matthias' system with, it calculates the roll right in the antenna. That's still the best. I mean, if you're gonna put these in, what should I buy? Matthias' system is number one. And then kind of way down everywhere else is the dual antenna, like the BiNav, and then the IMU, and then no IMU, which is sometimes better than an IMU, depending how rough it is. But the dual antenna is really, really nice. So I beat that question to death.
I think it's good that you did, though. I'll just keep going through these questions here, sort of as they came. I don't know, yeah. Andreas, if you want to wrap it up or something.
Yes, I also think I will record the question in a text file, and so we can answer it later also in the YouTube chat, so you also can read it later. So maybe you pick up the most interesting questions.
There's one about language file from Alex Brewy. What about language file? Will it be possible to translate? I hope so. It'll be just an Excel file again, and we can add translations and menus. Yeah, any piece of text on AgOpenGPS should be able to be translated. But the thing and this is where the graphics, the guys in the community that are good in graphics, the less words we have, the better. It just makes a much shorter translation file. Just make it simple to start with. And we don't need a big, long description of what the button does. If it's a section, put a picture of a section. Not write section in 17 different languages. Because picture should be the same. If it's a steering wheel, well, we know what it is. It's auto steer. So if we can get rid of the text, even better. That's the best language file of all.
Okay, cool. What about the difference between the CMPS 14 and the BNO 85? There are a lot of people talking about it on Discourse and on the Telegram group and on hell what I know about social media. So what's the big difference between both boards, and can we now say use this and don't buy the other?
I don't know.
I think
cool.
If you have I think if we have more field testing in the spring, and when farmers going to work, we see how good is the CMPS 14 working. So how many acres we do, how better we see what is going on. There was also a question to me because about the BiNav receiver. what's the difference between the dual system by Matthias Hammer or Franz Husch, or the commercial dual antenna systems just output a position and a heading. And most of the receivers can also output the height difference, so they output a roll value. And it's no difference between Trimper, PT982, the spine of receivers, and there's a Unicore receiver, and there's coming a receiver from Septembria. So we're doing the same. They are just outputting the position of the main antenna and the heading to the other antenna and the roll. And what Matthias and what Franz do, they do all the calculation, what is doing Brian in AgOpenGPS, they do in the ESP32. So they correct the position by heading and by row. Yes. So might be I can ask Binav if they do it on the board, but I think it's complicated for them.
It's all complicated. It's crazy. I can't believe it works. There was a question Darren asked about, have I tried the new guidance code in the real world? Yes. But it's just one guy, one old tractor. So everything works great on the desktop with a simulator. There's you can do all the math, and this is what's really frustrating about this project. You can have a perfect program and perfect algorithm, and you put it out in the tractor, and it's complete crap. You know, and then you use it in the tractor, and you go, oh, you know, then you get these. It over and over and over. Like if it happened once, okay, but it happens over and over and over again. That the real world is so different than any model you try to create. It's astounding. Because you have different delays, you know, you have whether it's a valve, whether it's a steer motor, you know, and you try to use it on a simulator and you try to make it oscillate or do these things, and it just doesn't. You put it in a tractor, and within 5 seconds, you know that auto steer isn't going to work. And so most of that code is written in the tractor and not on the desk. I mean, you get the basic framework done on the desk, but it's not science at that point. It pretty much becomes art to get some of those things working. So I hope that answers the question, Darren, that yeah, you write it in the seat of the tractor.
Okay. What about that question that Matt said there about the data log function in AgIO, so you can log some files incoming and then be able to export that data to Excel or something like that?
Well, all you could export in is just the NMEA sentence. Yeah, I don't know. Logging is a tough one. Because there's so much data. Like it's mind-boggling how much data pumps through that thing. You know, it's you're pretty much at the limit of the USB of you know, especially like it's surprising with NMEA data. You know, if you're running at 57,600 or whatever, just how much data is flying through there. You'd have to be pretty specific on what you want to collect. Put it that way. I don't think you could write files fast enough to jam it all into files. So I think you want to know what you want to save first, and then write the application to what you want to save.
One thing we can do with that AgIO now is rather and Joaquin is already said, we can develop a separate program to log it, to log all data from AgIO.
Yep, that's true.
That's a correct, and also there's the next question answered. One thing I want to talk about too is about Wallace's question. I think it's a good one. Pure pursuit will follow the line curve with pivot axle automatically. What is the advantage of the improved Stanley algorithm over pure pursuit?
Stanley. The ability to do integral.
Yeah.
I cannot figure out for the life of me how to do integral with Pure Pursuit. Unless, hey, it's a big world out there. Someone comes up with a way to do integral in Pure Pursuit, we're good. So put your thinking caps on, study the algorithm hard, and figure that one out. It always just, I don't know why, if you steer from the front and drag the tractor, it's kind of like, you know, pushing a chain across the road versus pulling a chain across the yard. It's a lot easier to pull that chain than it is to push one. And it seems to be that way with steering too. You can make it steer, but you just can't make it correct. Correct for those real world things like, you know, side hill drafts, or one side pulling harder than the other, or, you know, muddy ground on one wheel and not on the other wheel. All those things make it not follow the line. And as soon as you try to make it follow the line, then Pure Pursuit says no. And although you could try that same trick by moving the Pure Pursuit point off the line, but a well set up Stanley works. It uses the same information. It should just work.
Thank you for that question.
There's a question about UDP multicast. The problem is that the little Arduinos don't do multicast. Multicast UDP.
Yeah, it's the Ethernet chips on the Arduinos are capable.
Yeah, that's limited.
Yeah, understand that. Okay, cool. Well, in the meantime, I talked to Daniel and he fixed his program. He just had to insert .toList /open/close. But he didn't send me, so I can still show it. I thought he sent it, but no, he didn't. Cool. Are there more questions, Wilbert? I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a few more, but I think in the interest of time, it might be best to maybe save them and answer them somewhere else.
Yes. Then looks good to me.
It's funny because I think sometimes the little questions are the hardest ones to answer. Like, do you want to put in section width by meter, like 1.05 meters, or do you want to put 105 centimeters in? You know, those are the hard questions.
To create for your coding.
Yeah, no, it's purely a GUI thing, right? I mean, you can make a GUI to say 1.05 just as easily as 105, you know, in centimeters versus meters. But which one do people prefer?
Yeah.
You know, I think centimeters and inches are the way to go because they're quite similar measurements, you know, and the coding's quite easy. And then you don't have decimals to worry about.
Well, I think people can answer that on the chat here or in YouTube, and we can count them all up together and see who wins.
Yeah, those are like I say, those are the hard questions because it's like what's the best color? You know, those are the same kind of question. There was a question about mouse over and description popping up. You can't do mouse over in a touchscreen that I'm aware of.
Only if you have a mouse.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, graphics and everything are limited by the 1024 by 768. Sorry, Richard. I wish everyone used, 1920 by 1080. You can make a beautiful screen, but if you squish it down, to being a quarter of the screen, it's really hard to get any sort of workable graphics. And that's where that new settings screen, where you can scroll the menu on the side, is good, because then you can have a fairly good window to do settings, but then you're not limited by menu size. And then just flip it with your finger or scroll bar on the mouse, or use the mouse on the scroll bar. And if the menu is designed properly and you only have one submenu open at a time, then there's very little scrolling anyway. So 1024 by 768 is a huge challenge, but there's a lot of good 1024 screens out there, and they're really, really bright, and they're really good to use. So it's not something I'm going to give up. I see it as a challenge. So the other thing is, this stuff takes a ridiculous amount of time to do. And I feel bad sometimes, don't answer questions on the forum and on Telegram and stuff like that, but I'd hate to add up the amount of hours a guy spends programming this stuff, especially making big changes. I wish I had a team of engineers and, really good software management, because that's what it would take. It would take literally a professional programming team, to manage something like this, to have multiple programmers doing it. I don't know how anyone would manage a program like this. And again, if someone is willing to do the project management aspect of software, and if they have experience doing that, please step forward. It's something that's needed probably more than anything. Is people have good ideas, how do you set, what code can be accepted, what code can't be. Those are skills I do not have in any way, shape, or form. I like coming up with, like, say, new ideas and making those happen and try to put it in a reasonably functioning program. But adding a bunch of code from a bunch of other sources, I find that extremely difficult.
Okay, but then you mean project management a little bit different than I expect.
How would you call it?
I don't know how I would call it, but if you say, can somebody pick up the project management, I'm thinking of deciding who's doing what, when, and what we are going to develop. If you need help getting in pull requests and stuff like that, I'm more than willing to help.
Are you willing to project manage?
Well.
No. Yeah, well, then I guess the community is going to have to put up with poor performance and frustration.
Yeah, well, just push your work in progress to the cloud so we can all track the progress and maybe jump in.
Well, I think that's kind of what the trouble is you just need time. You just need time. It's all thought out. It's all figured out. Just need time to pound it all in the keyboard and debug it.
Okay, then, but maybe it's an idea to write it in tasks.
Yeah.
And give me a task.
Well, then that's kind of where I started. Is I've done lots of C++ programming and database programming and stuff like that, and you can compartmentalize it, in beautiful functions and keep everything nicely separate, but it doesn't run. It's too slow. It takes too long, and everything is happening at the same time in AgOpenGPS. In order to OpenGL is slow in C# and WinForms. So you have to do tricks around that. Like I say, using public variables, having access to everything at once. And as you make changes in one area and grabbing information from other areas, it just seems to be so interwoven. It's a problem, but like I say, what Daniel and I talked about it, and Daniel's a great programmer. He's like, it's a weird program.
Yeah, well, but still, then give me a task.
Okay, I don't know what to give you.
And I'm really well. I'm just thinking about doing some modularizing on the current code base, and would that be a waste?
Yes. Yes.
Because you're then ahead, or because you think it will be slow?
No, because the new code is 1,000 times better than that old code.
Yeah. Okay. So if
If you recall the picture of like what Andreas showed in the beginning, when there was literally just section control. Well, originally it was just mapping. The first thing, let me back up. We had RTK GPS years ago in our air seeder, and we do high residue seeding. And you probably have seen some of my videos of, seeding into tall straw. We couldn't tell where we had seeded and where we hadn't, and had a GPS signal. And that's how AgOpenGPS started, was reading the NMEA data, putting it in OpenGL, and just creating a map. So the first year I used it, that's all it did, was everywhere it drove, it left a map. And so when you turn the sections on, then it started mapping, and when you turn the drill off, then it stopped mapping. So that was the start of it. And then the section control, started with reading that buffer and figuring out, was it black or was it green? And the code, plus I was learning. I never knew how to program in Windows Forms or C#. So it was bad programming, bad learner programming right from the start, and then got bigger and bigger and bigger. And being a farmer, as you well know, you try to do stuff as quickly as you can in the winter. Well, there was no time to go back and go, we have to rewrite this whole thing. And so then that's what Daniel did is, I look back at some of the old code and I just go, oh,
Yeah, but professional developers like me do that also.
Oh, I suppose you get to a point, like especially when I started, there was no open source. There were no ideas on how to do anything in precision agriculture.
No.
Now at least we have some ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could start from scratch, I don't know, and maybe that's the thing to do, is start from scratch. I really encourage, someone or a group of people to start from scratch, take the good ideas, and build a modular system that can be worked on by multiple people. I personally think that's the right answer. Well, what do you think?
Well, starting from scratch has some advantages and also some disadvantages. The disadvantage is that you need to start from scratch.
That's the biggest.
And the advantage is that you can make new mistakes.
You get three-quarters of the way through and go, oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, it is not easy.
No, it's never easy. But
like I don't know how Linux, how Linus Torvald manages 150,000 programmers.
Well, he invented Git, has a modular setup, has a much wider thing he's managing. So one can program the peripherals, and the other can do memory management. The other can do thread scheduling. So they're not in the same space at all.
Yeah.
And maybe you can work together on the current status, and you just need to get by a merge conflict or two.
Well, that is the other challenge is WinForms and GitHub. They hate each other.
Yeah. So, but if you can abstract the WinForm stuff into separate things,
right,
then they don't get changed. And a lot of the
Go ahead. Sorry.
a lot of the WinForm stuff is dialogues like settings and stuff like that, right? So if you do model view presenter, for example, then if your logic changes, your form doesn't.
Right.
And then you don't need to, you don't have a merge conflict at all.
So the event of a button runs a function, which
Yeah.
goes off and does something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been doing that more and more. You know,
Yeah.
like if you click auto steer, that runs the auto steer function. It doesn't do auto steer code within the GUI part of the button.
Yeah, okay, but model view presenter is the auto steer button raises an event and the presenter says do auto steer.
Well, that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah. And then all your view, if you implement that, then you can also decide to implement a different view, even on different technology, and reuse the presenter and the model. Mm.
Yeah, I'm not that smart.
Oh. I've recently done posted some YouTube videos about Git. So I might do a Discord post on patterns and practices, just for everybody else to learn a little bit.
Well, you know,
would it be useful?
Absolutely. You know, this whole project is about learning, and just think of how much we all have learned from this.
Yeah.
You know, probably frustrated some people who are actually good like yourself at this sort of thing, but
oh, I'm not saying I'm good. I've done it a few times, so.
But when I see people, you know, that never used an Arduino before and pick up an Arduino and go, holy shit, this thing can steer my tractor, you know, and learn about code and uploading firmware and serial ports and learn about UDP and, you know, get into some C#. Man, that's heartwarming. It really is. So, you know, farmers all over the world, like you guys are, you know, you're a phenomenal bunch, eager to learn and to try things. And probably the best part about this whole project is it's not a big investment.
No.
You know, a $3 Arduino and a $50 motor, you know, and a $3 A to D converter, and you've got auto steer. If you've got a tablet or a laptop that you want to use for the time that the tractor's going, make nice straight lines. So, and that's, I think that's something that always got to keep in mind with this project, is that, you know, it literally is about learning and having fun. And if you try to make it too professional, then I think you lose some of that too. And but there needs to be enough professionalism that it's a good program and people can understand it and work and help with it. So that's my little soapbox. But I love that you guys are doing stuff with it and like I say, learning, because it's a lot of fun.
Thank you all. I think it's a nice way to wrap it up all. And thank you everybody to be here in Zoom, also on YouTube. Great to have you all here. We will take out all the questions we didn't answer from here on from YouTube, and we'll definitely do that on Telegram or maybe Discord, even better, to not get it lost away after a day. So I don't know if someone has kind of joke to quit, something to say. Nothing, no.
We're getting there. Please be patient on this latest version. There's so many changes, and but it's looking really, really, really good. And that's no joke.
Yep.
Great.
Well, all right. Thanks all.
Thanks, Richard, for putting this together.
Definitely. Okay. Goodbye,
Auf Wiedersehen.
guys.